Hey guys, Brad Merrill here. Thank you so much for joining me. I just want to take a quick second to introduce myself. First and foremost, I am an entrepreneur. I build businesses. I've been building things on the web for over a decade now, and one of those things was a large tech blog that served well over 500,000 readers and paid my bills. With it, I built relationships with a number of high-profile entrepreneurs and innovators, appeared regularly on TechMeme, and earned links from high-profile sites and publications such as the Wall Street Journal, Crunchbase, Wikipedia, and many others. What I hope to give you in this course is an all-inclusive and up-to-date guide detailing what I've learned over the years about what it takes to build a successful blog. Here are some of the things we'll cover in these lectures. The mindset of a successful blogger, the technology you'll need to build your site, so domains, hosting, WordPress, themes, plugins, security, backups, all of that is covered in the technology section. How to write amazing content that people will love and share. We'll talk about my favorite places to find content, ideas, and inspiration, and then I'll give you 20 specific content formats that you can apply to your own topic. Promotion strategies. Once you've got content, you need to actually get it in front of people, right? In the promotion section, we'll talk about search engine optimization, social media, and 12 content promotion strategies you can use to increase your traffic and grow your influence. How to build an email list. This one is often overlooked. There's an entire section devoted to building your email list, which is one of the most critical parts of growing an online business. We'll talk about how to set it up, the technology that powers it, how to get people to opt in, and 15 strategies you can implement on your site to grow your list more quickly and effectively. How to turn your blog into a revenue-generating asset. A blog is not a business on its own. That's kind of a common misconception. People think, oh, I have a blog, so I automatically have a business. You have to implement some kind of revenue model on top of it, like selling a product, offering services, selling advertising. We'll go into detail on all the different options you have. We're going to go deep with this course. By the end of it, you should be well on your way to building a successful blog with an audience and revenue. Now, before I go any further, just to be clear, I don't want anyone to get the idea that building a blog or building a business of any kind is easy. Like you just take this course and at the end you're suddenly a successful blogger. Obviously it doesn't work like that. I wish it did, but it does not. It takes time and it takes work. I tried to design this course as a complete blueprint with all the information you'll need, but it's up to you to actually take action and put in the work. My success comes from many, many 16-hour days and plenty of failure and trial and error along the way. I'm hoping to give you a little bit of an edge with this course, but building a business of any kind takes work, and I want to make sure you understand that from the get-go. So why would you want to do this? What do you get out of building a blog? Well, there are several common motivations. The first, and probably the most popular, is to build a business. A blog can be the center of a low overhead, location independent, profitable business. There's never been a better time to do this, by the way. We're living in the digital age, my friends, and that means it's cheaper and more feasible than ever for you or anyone to start a business. If you're willing to put in the work, you can absolutely do it. You just got to make it happen. The second motivation is to grow an existing business. Content marketing. Have you heard of that before? It's one of the best ways to drive your business forward, and a blog is a tried and true format for content marketing. Many of the biggest companies and brands in the world are now using digital content to market their products and services, so you'll be in great company if you do the same. You can also use a blog to showcase your expertise. If you want to position yourself as a thought leader or an expert, blogging is an excellent way to do that. I know some people who have used their blogs as leverage to land a job, and others who have used them to launch careers in public speaking. The next one is build relationships. Blogging can help you become an active member of your community and build relationships with people you want to reach. For me personally, blogging has helped me meet so many new friends and connections in the tech world. It's amazing how many interesting people you can meet just by becoming an active member of the community. And finally, if you're passionate about your topic, you may find that writing about it is just a lot of fun for its own sake. Even if you don't consider yourself a great writer, the process of researching and talking to people and sharing ideas is incredibly fulfilling. How much does it cost to start a blog? Well, as we'll see, the initial investment can be as low as nothing or as high as thousands, depending on your budget and your ambitions. Most new bloggers can get a great website up and running for well under $100. We'll cover all the various costs of setting up a blog, as well as their free alternatives later in the course. There is a ton of information in this course, and I want to make sure you get as much value out of it as possible. What I recommend for most students is to first complete the course from start to finish to give you a bird's eye view of everything, and then return to specific sections based on where you are in your own progress. I've also designed the course to be friendly to people with different levels of experience, so you can feel free to skip around if something feels a bit redundant to you. For example, if you've already installed WordPress, there's no reason for you to sit and listen to me talk about installing WordPress. That's just a waste of your time, so please feel free to skip around. Also, before we get started, I just want to say thank you for joining me in this course. I know there's a million other things you could be doing right now, so I really hope to make it worth your time. Thanks again, and let me know if you have any questions along the way. Let's talk about the mindset of a successful blogger. What does that look like, and how can you set yourself up for success by getting yourself in the right mindset? One of the most important pieces of advice I can offer you if you plan on starting a blog, or really any new endeavor, is to know your why. So what does that mean? Think about the overarching vision you have for your life and for your career, and determine how this project fits into that vision. What's your end game? Why do you want to embark on this journey? For example, maybe you're really passionate about a topic and you want to share that passion with an audience. Or maybe you want to start a business that allows you to live with a little more freedom and flexibility. Maybe you're not happy with the current media landscape in your industry and you want to shake things up and change it a little bit, make it better. Or hey, maybe you just want to earn more money. And that is a perfectly legitimate motivation if that's something that truly drives you. Whatever your motivation is, keep it in mind to keep you moving forward at all times, even when things get difficult. You can compound that internal motivation with a healthy dose of discipline, which I'd argue is even more important than motivation. Commit to working on your blog and making tangible progress toward your goals every single day, even when you don't feel particularly motivated. This commitment, this habitual progress, is truly what separates world-class performers from the rest. Stephen King famously said, "Amateurs sit and wait for inspiration. The rest of us just get up and go to work." If you're just getting started, all this mindset stuff probably sounds a little off topic, a little tangential. But the fact is, most blogs fizzle out long before they've had a chance to prosper. The odds are fundamentally stacked against you. But when you're working with the right mindset, when your heart's in the right spot, when your head's in the right spot, it's much easier to make everything else fall into place. No blogger has ever failed mid-keystroke. Let me say that again. No blogger has ever failed mid-keystroke. Failure comes when you stop working. Your blog may not have as much traffic as you want, or as much influence as you want, or as much revenue as you want. But those things can always be improved. That's part of the process. You only fail if you give up and quit. So if you can start with a strong internal motivation and then follow through with some actual discipline and habit in your execution, you will be absolutely unstoppable. While we're on the topic of mindset, I should mention that if money is one of your motivations, your blog is going to be a business, and it deserves to be treated like one. With any new business, there are going to be ups and downs, plenty of setbacks, plenty of challenges, and it's going to take a good deal of time and effort to grow. So make sure you understand that and make sure you're prepared. When you start a blog, what you're really doing is building a media company, and a media company needs a business model. In most cases, your blog is not the product. What you're actually selling, what you're charging money for, is some other product or service such as ad space or consulting services, a book or a course, or a physical product of some kind. From this perspective, a blog is just like any other business. You're selling something of value for money. So it's helpful to think of your revenue model not as monetizing your blog, but as providing a valuable product or service that improves the lives of your customers or clients. Now that's a subtle distinction, but it makes all the difference in growing your business because it shifts your focus from lining your own pockets to providing something people are actually willing to pay for. We'll discuss specific business models in more detail later in the course. The last mindset thing I want to cover is for those of you who don't consider yourselves good writers. This is a mental block that I think keeps a lot of people from even getting started. Look, maybe you're not the best writer. Maybe you suck. But guess what? So did every other writer when they first started. The only way to get better at anything is to consistently practice and work on mastering your craft. Ask any well-known blogger, and they'll probably tell you they're embarrassed by their earliest blog posts. In a few years, you will be too, and that's okay. Again, the best way to improve your writing is to write, but I also recommend reading content that's written in the style you'd like to emulate. If you want a short reference guide on the mechanics of writing, grab a copy of The Elements of Style by William Strunk Jr. and E.B. White. I'm also a fan of On Writing by Stephen King. Often when people want to start a blog, they start doing all kinds of research on web hosting and content management systems and themes and plugins and all of the technology without taking time to think about a content strategy. Don't worry, we will cover all of that stuff, but technology is just a tool. It's not the destination. Your number one concern when you start a blog should be your content, because that's what people want from you. Nobody's going to read your blog just because you have a cool WordPress theme. Design is important, yes, but your content has to come first. The first part of developing a content strategy is this: choose a topic or don't. Let me explain. I recommend focusing on a specific topic because you can position yourself as an expert and grow a lot more quickly than if you were just trying to be everything for everyone. When you choose a topic, you'll want to find something that's just specific enough for you to carve out an audience for yourself, but broad enough that an audience actually exists. In my case, I chose to write about technology with a focus on new startups and innovation. I actually could have gone more specific and covered just VR startups or clean energy startups or iPhone apps or something like that. When you're more specific, you can scale your audience and grow your influence and begin to generate revenue much more quickly. If you don't want to commit to a single topic, you can get similar results by committing to a particular worldview instead. So instead of focusing on just one topic, you can focus on a number of topics that matter to people who share a similar mindset or worldview. So as an example, Maria Popova writes an excellent blog called Brain Pickings. So what she does is she reads books, lots and lots of books, and on her blog she shares insights and things she's learned from reading those books, often drawing parallels between different authors and different time periods. The topic of each post is completely different from any other post, but she fundamentally appeals to curious, creative people who tend to be lifelong learners. Another example is Chris Guillebeau, who writes a blog called The Art of Nonconformity. He writes about entrepreneurship, travel, and unconventional living, three things that sound unrelated but appeal to people with a particular worldview, one that rejects conventional expectations and favors the road less traveled. So it's up to you. Choose a topic, choose a worldview, or choose nothing at all, but understand that a more specific focus will allow you to grow more quickly. Once you've got a topic in mind, it's time to think about the types of content you'll be creating and what people will gain from it. Most content serves one of four main purposes: entertainment, education, persuasion, or conversion. Entertainment is obviously meant to entertain people. Educational content explains or teaches the reader something. Persuasive content makes arguments for a particular position or viewpoint, and conversion entices people to buy or take some other action. You can apply those purposes to various content formats like lists, how-to guides, news articles, reviews, thought and opinion pieces, interviews, case studies, and so on and so forth. Later in the course, we'll dive deeper into content strategy, and I'll give you a whole bunch of specific content ideas, but I just wanted to get you thinking about it right off the bat because your content strategy is a lot more important than what WordPress theme you use. Ultimately, the most important question to answer is this: how and to whom will you provide value? Who is your audience and what will your content do to improve their lives? Let's talk for a moment about branding. The first question many people have is whether you should use your own name or create a separate brand for your blog. That really depends on your preferences. Your personal name is more open-ended and can evolve with you, but a separate brand is better suited for building a sellable asset. If you think there's a chance you'll ever part with your blog, it's probably best to create a separate brand so it's less dependent on you as an individual. Naming is hard, and it's probably my least favorite part of starting a new project. Spend some time thinking of a good name and brainstorm ideas with other people if you can. Try and come up with something you're happy with because you're going to be stuck with it for a while, but understand that the name really doesn't matter all that much. For example, what was a Twitter before Twitter? What was a Google before Google? It's up to you to create meaning around your brand. As you're brainstorming ideas, you'll want to check to see whether your favorites are available as domain names. Domainer.com is a great tool for this. It's DOMAINR.com. It'll show you exactly which domains are available for the name you enter, along with some creative variations. I recommend going with a .com domain if possible, just because people still tend to trust it the most, but I'll also say that the extension matters less today than ever before. Again, it's up to you to build a meaningful and recognizable brand. Once you've decided on a name, you'll probably want a logo to represent your brand visually. I design most of my logos myself in Photoshop or Illustrator. I'm not a graphic designer, but I can handle simple text-based logos. But I've also had great results working with 99 Designs, where for a couple $100 you can hold a design contest and have dozens of designers compete to create a winning logo for you. You can also use services like Upwork and Fiverr for design, but you have to watch out for low-quality designs and trademark infringement on those platforms. 99 Designs guarantees all of its designs to be unique and trademarkable with the US Patent Office, so to me that's worth the extra money. But again, you can always create something yourself with Photoshop or Illustrator or even a free program like GIMP. When you set out to start a new blog, there's like a trillion different options that you can use for your content management system. And that is the software you use to actually build your site and publish content. You have WordPress, you have Drupal, you have Joomla, you have Squarespace, you have Tumblr and Blogger and all these different options. I'm going to be super straightforward and tell you right now to use WordPress. Now, of course, you can do your own research. You can determine what works for you. But I do believe WordPress is the best choice for a content management system for the vast majority of new bloggers. There's really no contest. WordPress is the most popular CMS in the world, and for good reason. It's free, it's open source, it's easy to use, it offers an endless world of extensibility through themes and plugins, and because so many people use it, there's so much documentation and support. It's really just the best choice. Now, before I go any further, I want to explain the difference between WordPress.com and WordPress.org. WordPress.com is a fully hosted service you can sign up for to build a blog or website without having to manage the underlying technology yourself. WordPress.org is where you can download the WordPress software and install it on your own web server. I really like this explanation from the Daily Post blog on WordPress.com. Having a blog or website here on WordPress.com is a bit like renting an apartment in a complex. You don't have to worry about the pipes freezing in winter, you don't have to mow the backyard, and you don't have to fix the dishwasher if it breaks. All of that is your landlord's job. But on the other hand, you can't install skylights, knock down a wall to combine two rooms, or rent out your spare bedroom without the landlord's permission. Similarly, here at WordPress.com, we support your site and we take care of all the updates, the backups, the security. But since all of our users share this platform, we don't permit you to use plugins since they can introduce security risks or outside themes. And there are a few terms of service that we require our bloggers to follow to keep WordPress.com nice for everybody. When you move to a self-hosted WordPress site, it's like buying your own house. You can knock down the walls or build an extension. You can rent out your garage for practice space to a local band. You can keep a lion in the backyard. But if your heat goes out in the middle of winter, you have to fix it or hire someone who can. If you self-host, you can install all the plugins you want, but if one of them breaks your site, you have to figure out how to fix it. Luckily, WordPress.org has a great support forum with many knowledgeable and helpful volunteers. You're also responsible for performing routine updates and backing up your content, but the only rules you're bound by are your own. My recommendation and what we'll focus on in this course is self-hosted WordPress. It's just better suited for serious blogs for a variety of reasons, one of which being that most of the revenue models we'll cover later cannot be done on WordPress.com. The next few lectures will cover the process of installing and setting up WordPress, but if you decide to go with another platform, don't worry, there's a lot more to this course than just WordPress, so feel free to skip ahead. If you've decided on a name for your blog, it's time to register a domain and get a web hosting account. The domain registration process is pretty straightforward. Just go to the registrar of your choice, look up the domain you want, add it to your cart, and check out. Side note, many hosting companies also sell domains, so if you'd like to get your domain and hosting from the same place, you can totally do that. As for hosting, you'll find there are several options. There's shared hosting, which is ideal when you're just starting out because it's cheap, and in fact, most blogs can continue to run well on shared hosting for quite a while. Then there are virtual private servers and dedicated servers, which give you more power and dedicated resources that you don't have to share with other customers. That's something you might consider as your blog grows and needs to support a larger audience. There's also managed WordPress hosting, a service increasingly offered by many of the big hosting companies, as well as a couple of dedicated WordPress hosts such as WP Engine and Synthesis. These are used by a lot of serious bloggers who don't want to deal with things like site performance and backups, and they're worth checking out if you fall into that category. Here's some of the web hosts I recommend. In this lecture, we're going to talk about installing WordPress. Most web hosts these days offer one-click WordPress installation right through the control panel, which is super easy. So for most people, that's the way to go. The process is going to look a little different depending on which web host you use. What I'm showing you here is how to do it in cPanel, which is the control panel software that a lot of web hosts use. The first thing you need to do on any web host is find the app installer. So in cPanel, it'll usually be under Software. And here you'll see it says Softaculous Apps Installer. Find something that looks something like that. I know in DreamHost they just call it a one-click installer. And you'll click on that and see some kind of dashboard like this. It may be a little more simplistic, but generally you'll see a list of apps. WordPress will almost always be the first one because it's so popular. And all you have to do is click Install. Once you've done that, you'll see a page like this where we can enter some information about your WordPress install and get it set up. So first you want to choose the protocol. Now generally you're going to choose HTTP here. You can also choose HTTPS if you have SSL set up on your server. And then you can also choose whether you want www dot to be part of the URL or if you just want HTTP. So I'm going to go with HTTP. Then you choose the domain. If you only have one domain, it should automatically be here, or you can choose it from the dropdown. So I'm going to go with example.net for this example installation. In directory, this is the folder where you're going to install WordPress on this domain. So whatever you put here, it's going to be example.net/WP or example.net/blog. Or example.net/WordPress. If you don't want it to be /anything, then you delete that and it'll install it directly on example.net. So I'm going to leave it blank, and you most likely want to leave that blank as well. Site settings. These are pretty self-explanatory. You want to name your site. I'm going to call it My Example Site. And then your site description, I'll probably delete this later, but I think the installer requires you to have some kind of description here. So we're just going to leave My WordPress Blog. Admin account. Again, pretty self-explanatory. You want to create a username and a password. And then you want to enter your email address. This is where you'll receive notifications from your WordPress install. Choose your language. Limit login attempts with Loginizer. We're going to check this, and I will explain exactly what that is and what it does a little later. You don't really have to dig into the advanced options here. and then you can select a theme if you want to. We're going to talk about themes later and how to actually find themes from within the WordPress dashboard. So I'm just going to leave this blank and let it install the default WordPress theme. Now at the bottom, if you want, you can email installation details to a particular email address. You can enter your email there to receive the login URL and all that stuff. And then you can just click install. And again, this will look a little different depending on which web host you use, but it should look pretty similar. So here we have it. It says, congratulations, the software was installed successfully. So it'll show you your URL and your administrative URL. So this will be your site. We'll go ahead and open it, example.net. And we should see a blank WordPress site here with the default theme. Looks good. We have our hello world post there. We can go back. And then the administrative URL is example.net/wp-admin. And this is where we can log in to our WordPress site. And here we are. So that's all there is to it. You may need to adapt those steps a little bit to your web host, but it should look something like that. In this lecture, I want to give you a quick overview of the WordPress dashboard to make sure you understand where everything is and how it all works. This is going to be super basic, so bear with me if you're a little more advanced. I just want to make sure you have a good understanding of how WordPress works so we can dive deeper and use it to build some cool stuff later in the course. So let's start over here with the main menu. You'll be using this menu a lot to navigate between different admin pages in WordPress. The first thing you should notice is that our current page, the dashboard, is highlighted and expanded, and it has a couple of submenu options underneath it. The same is true with the rest of the menus here. Just hover your mouse over each option to expand it. So after the dashboard, we have Posts, which is where you manage your blog posts, Media, which is where you'll find any photos, videos, or audio that you've uploaded to the site, Pages, which are a little different from posts. These are your permanent static pages, like your About page or your Contact page. Comments, that's where you can manage and moderate the comments people leave on your site. Appearance is where you manage your themes and the overall look and feel of your site. Plugins are basically extensions that add various functionality to WordPress to make it do exactly what you want it to. Under users, you can edit your own profile and account information, or you can add other users to the site with the exact editing privileges you want them to have. In the tools menu, you'll find things like import and export tools, which allow you to move content from one site to another. Settings includes all the global settings for WordPress and your site itself. Loginizer Security is a plugin that the one-click installer automatically activated for us. Plugins can add their own menus to this panel, so that's why that's there. And finally, you can collapse this menu right here to give yourself a little more workspace, and then just click that icon again to bring everything back. Now let's take a look at the admin bar at the very top of the page. We'll just start from the left side and work our way across. So the WordPress logo here is something you'll probably never use, but it doesn't hurt to have it there. If you click it, you'll get information about your current version of WordPress, and you can also go to wordpress.org, read the documentation, visit the support forums, or send feedback. The next item here is just the name of your site. If you click that, it'll take you to your homepage. Next, there's a comment button with a little number to let you know how many comments are waiting for your approval. And then we have the New button, which is probably what you'll use the admin bar for more than anything else. You can use these options to add a new post, media, page, or user. And finally, if we jump all the way over to the right side, it says Howdy and then your username. That's just a quick shortcut to edit your profile or log out. Now let's zoom out and take a look at the main dashboard page itself. When you first create your site, you'll see this big box at the top that says, "Welcome to WordPress. We've assembled some links to get you started." So it basically just gives you some easy shortcuts to the essentials. Pretty useful as you're getting started, but if you want to get rid of it, just click Dismiss and it disappears. If you want to bring it back, you can go up to Screen Options. And by the way, you'll find this on just about every page inside WordPress. And check the box next to Welcome. Now, of course, you can also select or deselect any of these other options to show or hide whatever you want. And if you want to customize your experience a little more, you can drag and drop each of these dashboard widgets to wherever you want them. And while we're on the subject, let's take a look at these widgets and what they do. At a glance tells you some quick information about your site, the number of posts, pages, comments, along with the version of WordPress you're running and your theme. Activity shows what's happening with your site right now. You can see your recently published posts and recent comments. Quick Draft lets you type in a title and a little bit of content to save it as a draft. So if you have a quick idea for a blog post, you can use that to make sure you don't forget. And then you have the WordPress News widget, which is basically just a feed of updates from the official WordPress blog. So I guess that's it. That is the WordPress dashboard in a nutshell. Now that you're somewhat familiar with the WordPress interface, we're going to jump down to the bottom of the menu here and edit some settings. Let's start with our general settings, which are the most basic controls over your WordPress site. So as you can see here, you can edit your site title and tagline at any time. Below that, you'll notice you can change your WordPress address as well as your site address. Now first, let me warn you that you almost never want to edit your WordPress address on this screen because it will break your site and lock you out unless you move your WordPress files to the new address immediately after changing that. Your site address is a little different. You would use that if you wanted your site homepage to be different from your WordPress homepage. So for instance, if your main site is example.net and you have WordPress installed at example.net/blog, you would enter example.net here. So when people click on your homepage link or your logo, they go back to the main site. That's kind of a rare use case, but it's nice to have if you need it. Most of the time, though, you'll want to leave both of those fields alone. The email address here is where all of your administrative notifications go. So when WordPress updates automatically or when a new user is added, you'll be notified at this address. Speaking of users, you can specify here whether you want people to be able to register and join your site without you adding them yourself. And then you can choose the default role here. Subscriber is usually the smartest option because they have no editing privileges. Next, you can edit your time zone. Just choose a nearby city or the appropriate UTC offset. And then you can edit your date and time format. This determines how your site displays the date and time on your posts and comments and things like that. And then you can choose the day you want your week to start with. That's just an organizational thing based on your preference. And finally, you can change your site language. So now that we're finished with this page, we're going to go back over to the menu and take a look at the writing settings. The first thing you see here is the default post category. Whatever you select here will be assigned to any post that you don't assign at least one other category to. This will default to uncategorized, which I think makes a lot of sense for posts that haven't been categorized. But once you've added some categories, you can change that to whatever you like. Default post format. Standard is the best option for most people here, and you can always change that on an individual basis from the post editing screen. I know I'm glazing over this a little bit, but we will discuss post formats later in the course. Post via email. This is something that isn't used very often, but if you'd like to set up an email address you can email content to and have it automatically published to your site, you can set that up here. And then we have update services. There's a service here called Ping-O-Matic that's automatically included, and anytime you publish a post, WordPress will notify that service, and it will notify all the major search engines so your site is discoverable. If you don't want that to happen, you can just delete that URL and leave that box empty. Moving right along, let's dive into our reading settings. The first option here determines what shows up on your front page. It's either your latest posts in a traditional blog format or a static page. So if you go with a static page, you can select which page you want for your front page, and then optionally you can select a posts page that will display your latest posts. For example, you could create a page called Home for your home page and set that as your front page here, and then you could create a page called Blog and set that as your posts page. For the time being, I'm just going to stick with the default setting, your latest posts. Next, you can choose how many posts appear on your blog pages, and that also includes places like your category archives and search results. Anywhere WordPress lists your posts, it's going to be limited to this number per page. The next option is the same general idea, but it applies to your RSS feed. Now, RSS isn't as popular as it used to be, but it's basically a way for people to read your posts in a feed reader like Dig Reader, for example. 10 is usually sufficient for that. Along the same lines, you can choose whether people who read your content with RSS get the entire post or just a summary. If you choose summary, they'll only get the first paragraph or so, and they'll have to click through to your site to read the rest. Search engine visibility. If you check this box, search engines like Google will not index your site. Most people will want to leave this unchecked for obvious reasons. Next, we have discussion settings. These settings govern the comment system on your site. So first, we have the default article settings. This is what happens by default, but you can always override these options on an individual post. Attempt to notify any blogs linked to from the article, and allow link notifications from other blogs on new articles. That is completely up to you. Basically, this just appears as a comment on a site, letting them know that another site has linked to them. Allow people to post comments on new articles. This is the default setting for all new posts, but again, you can always override that and enable or disable comments on an individual post. Comment author must fill out name and email. If you uncheck that, it'll allow people to comment anonymously. Users must be registered and logged in to comment. Pretty self-explanatory, just adds another level of security to your site. Automatically close comments on articles older than 14 days, or whatever number you specify. If you enable that, comments will be open until the post is 14 days old, and then they will be closed automatically. Threaded or nested comments are basically where you have a reply to a reply to a reply to a reply, and you can choose how many levels of replies can happen. The next option allows you to break comments into pages if you want, and you can specify how many top-level comments you want displayed per page. Next, you can choose what order to display your comments in, whether you want the oldest or the newest comments to be on top. You can set up email notifications to notify you whenever there's a new comment, or when a comment is held for moderation, or you can uncheck both of those to get no notifications at all. Next, you can choose how moderation works. If you check this first box, every comment must be approved before it shows up. If you check the second box, everybody has to have their first comment approved, but they can comment freely after that. And if you uncheck both of those boxes, all comments will automatically post with no approval process on your end. Hold a comment in the queue if it contains 2 or more links. This will help protect your site from spam, and I recommend you keep that at a maximum of 2. These 2 boxes are here for words, phrases, URLs, email addresses, and IP addresses that you'd like to flag automatically if they appear in a comment. So anything you add to this first box will hold a comment in your moderation queue, so you'll have to approve it before it goes live. The second box is for stuff where there's no chance of a false positive, because when anything in this box appears in a comment, the comment goes straight to the trash without even notifying you. At the bottom of this page, we have avatar settings. Pretty simple. Choose whether to show avatars, choose the maximum rating that's appropriate for your site, and choose a default avatar for people who may not have one. Media settings are super simple. When you're inserting an image into a post or a page, you have a few sizing options for how the image will be scaled and displayed. You can do full size, you can choose the exact dimensions, or you can go with one of these preset sizes, large, medium, and thumbnail. So you can set these dimensions to whatever works best for you, and you may want to return to this page in the future once you've kind of figured that out. Our final settings page is permalinks. This determines what the link structure for your site looks like. By default, it uses this plain option, example.net/?p=123, which is not very search engine friendly, And not very human friendly either, because when I look at that, I have no idea what it is. So whenever I launch a new site, one of the first things I do is change the permalink structure to something that makes sense. My two favorites are post name, which is as simple and readable as it gets, and day and name, which includes the date of publication in the URL. As long as you've got the post name in your permalinks, the rest is totally up to you. And finally, you can also change the link structure for your category and tag URLs. So if I have a category called business, the page for that category would be example.net/category/business. If I wanted to, I could use this to replace the word category with something like topics, so then my URL would be example.net/topics/business. And the same thing applies for tags. One of the big choices you have to make when starting a WordPress site is which theme to use. WordPress themes make it easy to style your site without having to design and hand code it yourself. You just upload a theme file, activate it, and boom, your website has a brand new design. You can create your own theme or hire a developer to create one for you, but it's much easier and cheaper to use a pre-existing theme. And there are thousands available, so you should be able to find one that's just right. WordPress comes bundled with a default theme that gets an overhaul about once a year, and you can use that for your blog if you want to keep it simple. But since it is the default theme, it's used on a huge number of sites, so it'll be harder for you to stand out in the design department. When it comes to WordPress themes, there are free themes and premium themes. Most free themes are available from the theme repository on WordPress.org, which is also accessible directly through the themes section of your WordPress dashboard. From there, you can browse through the many available themes using filters to narrow your search. Then when you find one you like, you can see a live preview and install it on your site. For paid themes, there are a ton of different places to look. Just Googling is a good start, but one of the most popular places is ThemeForest, a marketplace where independent developers sell their themes. When you purchase a theme, you'll usually get a zip file that you can upload directly through the WordPress dashboard to install. Paid themes are often of a higher quality than free themes, but there are plenty of solid free themes out there if you're working with a limited budget. Choosing the right WordPress theme can be a time-consuming process, but it's totally worth it when you find a theme that makes your site look just the way you want. WordPress plugins offer a way to extend the functionality of your website without having to write the code yourself. Like with themes, WordPress.org has a repository of free plugins, which you can also access from the plugins section of your dashboard. For the sake of performance and security, it's not a good idea to load your site up with tons of plugins, but they can be a great solution to make your site do what you want it to. Here are a few examples of popular plugins. WooCommerce adds e-commerce functionality to your WordPress site. BuddyPress turns your site into a full-fledged social network. Contact Form 7 is the most popular plugin for adding contact forms to your site. Akismet monitors your comments and protects you from spam. Yoast SEO helps you optimize your site for search engines, and so on and so forth. We could talk all day about different plugins and what they do, and we'll talk about several specific ones throughout this course, but for now I just wanted to introduce you to what they are and where to find them. Before you install a plugin from WordPress.org, check out the reviews to see what other people are saying about it. Does it do what it claims to do? Does it cause any problems or conflict with other plugins? You can also purchase plugins from third-party vendors, but that's not something you'll need to do often, as most of the functionality you can think of is already covered by free plugins on WordPress.org. If you do decide to buy a premium plugin, do some research on the developer first to make sure they're reputable. WPMU Dev, for example, is an excellent source for quality premium plugins. One of the responsibilities that comes with hosting your own WordPress site is managing your own security and backups. This is a pretty dull subject, and a lot of people tend to put it off or assume it's not that important, but trust me, if your site ever gets hacked, or if you lose a bunch of data in some kind of catastrophe, you're going to wish you'd been prepared from the start. We won't spend too much time on this, but I want to go over the essentials so you can protect yourself. Let's start with the most basic thing: passwords. Understand that as the administrator of your WordPress install, your password is the only thing stopping an intruder from gaining unfettered control of your site and locking you out. So make sure your WordPress password is secure, like a complex mix of letters, numbers, and symbols that would not be easy to guess, and don't use it for any other site. On a related note, it's a good idea to use a password manager like LastPass to generate and store secure passwords for all of your accounts. All you have to remember is a single master password. LastPass handles the rest, and it's totally free. I also recommend you install a plugin called Limit Login Attempts. One of the simplest methods that hackers use to gain access to a site is a brute force attack, which is a trial and error tactic where a bot basically tries random username and password combinations over and over until it finally gets in. This plugin will automatically lock a user out after a set number of unsuccessful login attempts, protecting you from brute force attacks. There are a lot of plugins out there for backups and security, but there's one in particular that I recommend more than any other, and that's WordPress. Now, it is subscription-based, so it'll cost you anywhere from $5 to $30 a month, depending on the plan you choose, but I'd say it's well worth it for what you get. So what is WordPress? It's a service that automatically backs up your data and monitors your site for malware and security flaws. If you need to restore a backup, you can do it basically with a couple of clicks. And WordPress is made by the same people who make WordPress, so they really know their stuff. Getting set up is as easy as signing up at WordPress.com and then installing the WordPress plugin on your site. If you can't justify the cost of WordPress yet, there are also free plugins such as WordFence for security and Backup WordPress for backups. As long as you have something to prepare yourself, you're good. As your blog grows, you're going to need a way to monitor your traffic and other key performance indicators. Google Analytics is kind of the industry standard for this, and I encourage you to install it on day one. It's pretty straightforward to set up. Just go to analytics.google.com, sign in with your Google account, and create a new analytics account for your blog. It'll give you a snippet of code to copy and paste, and you'll want to make sure it's included on every page of your site. Some WordPress themes have a special field in the theme options panel where you can enter this, but you can also do it with a plugin like Google Analytics by Monster Insights, which adds the tracking code to your site and displays some of your stats right within the WordPress dashboard. I'm also a big fan of Jetpack, which is a plugin that provides a bunch of WordPress.com features to self-hosted users. One of those features is a real-time stat tracking interface that's simpler than Google Analytics and great for getting a quick overview of your site's performance. Jetpack also has a ton of other useful features, so it's totally worth checking out. Okay, now it's time to talk about content, the heart and soul of your blog. This is truly what it's all about. If you want your blog to succeed, it is imperative that your content is up to par. In this section, we'll talk about exactly how to achieve that. First, we'll cover 8 of the best places to find inspiration and ideas for future posts. And then I have 20 specific content ideas that you can steal and apply to your own blog. We'll also discuss content frequency and ask the question, how often should you post? Ready? Let's dive in. In this lecture, I'd like to go through the essentials of how to craft a great blog post. There's no magic formula here. You have to experiment and see what works for you, but there are a few things I want you to consider when you're creating new content. The first thing is your audience. Think about who you're trying to reach with your content and what they're looking for. What kinds of things do they want to know about? What types of content resonate with them? We'll talk about getting to know your target audience in a little more detail in the next lecture. Next is your topic. This is pretty straightforward. Decide what the post is going to cover and what its purpose is, and make sure everything else is centered around that. Every post should serve one particular purpose. If you try to do too many things with a single post, you may end up diluting the value for your readers. So focus on one thing at a time. Your title is important because it's the first thing people see, and it entices the reader to click when they see your post on search engines or social media. It should be something relatively short, ideally less than 55 characters if you want it all to show up on Google, but it should also be catchy and unique. Spend some time on your post titles because they can make or break your first impressions. Next, we have the opening line, the very first sentence or paragraph of your post. This is where you have to continue to build interest. You've already captured people with the title, but at this point they're trying to see if your post is actually worth the time it takes to read it. So grab their attention with an engaging first line and then follow through with great content. In the 21st century, attention spans are shorter than ever. And a fact of life for bloggers is that many visitors don't read our content so much as they scan it. So it's a good idea to cater to that demographic by formatting your posts and making them easy to skim while still providing plenty of substance. What that means is your post shouldn't just be a big wall of text. You can use subheadings, images, videos, bullet point lists, things like that to break up your prose and make it a little more digestible. You can also highlight important points with bold or italicized text, but try to use those sparingly. How long is the ideal blog post? I've seen arguments and data on both sides of this debate, so my answer to the question is this: as long as it needs to be. I've written posts under 500 words that went on to generate tens of thousands of page views just because they provided value and gave people exactly what they were looking for. On the other hand, I've also had success with longer content, say 2,000 to 4,000 words, because it dives deep and offers more information than my competitors. There is some evidence that Google favors longer content when it comes to search rankings, but it has to be good content. Don't add fluff to increase your word count like you would on a college paper or something. Just think about how you can pack as much value into your posts as possible. You'll notice the recurring theme here is it's not about word count, it's about the amount of value you can provide. And finally, it's a good idea to have a call to action at the end of your posts, which is where you direct the reader to take the next step. What this looks like depends on your particular goals. It could be asking them to leave a comment or join your email list or check out a product, something like that. Whatever the case, if they've made it to the end of your post, they're already engaged with your content. So you should take that opportunity to keep them engaged. So that's it. You're now well on your way to writing some epic blog posts. Next, we'll talk about how to get to know your target audience and come up with content ideas that they will love. A lot of people wonder how prolific bloggers always have fresh content ideas. But my question is, how don't you have fresh content ideas? There are so many possibilities, and even if you run out of ideas in your own head, there's plenty of inspiration out there on the web if you know where to look. For example, BuzzSumo is a really interesting tool that allows you to explore the top performing content for any topic or competitor. So you enter a topic or domain into the search bar, and it shows you the most popular content within a specified time period based on social media shares. This can teach you a lot about the types of content your target audience loves, which can serve as a guide for your own strategy. You can also use it to find where your competitors may be lacking. So you can look through all the top content on a particular subject and identify areas where you can create something better. Quora is one of my favorite sites on the web. It's a Q&A service where people ask and answer questions on thousands of different topics, and the questions get answered by real people with real experience. So what does this have to do with finding content ideas? Well, you can sign up for Quora and follow topics related to your blog, and then you'll have all kinds of questions asked by real people in your target audience that you can then incorporate into your content strategy. If there's a relevant question that a lot of people are following on Quora, it means there's demand for an answer, and you can write a great blog post based on that. Reddit can be a goldmine for content ideas straight from the people you're trying to reach. If you're not familiar with how Reddit works, it's a message board website divided into various boards called subreddits, which are each focused on a particular topic. You can find a subreddit for just about anything. As a general rule, I'd say if there are at least 4 people interested in a topic, there's probably a subreddit for it. So you find a couple of relevant subreddits and look at what's being posted there. Pay attention to the types of links that get a lot of upvotes, but also dig into the text posts and comments to see what kinds of conversations are happening. Chances are you'll find more than a few potential content ideas. Next, we have forums. Much like Reddit, forums are a place where your target market hangs out, so you can dig through the archives and find a lot of great content ideas. To find forums focused on your topic, you can head over to Google and search for something like your topic forums, or use a website like thebiggestboards.com, which lists popular forums by category. Facebook and LinkedIn groups are very similar to forums, but they're a lot more popular and accessible in the age of social media. Public groups are searchable, so find yourself some relevant groups and pay attention to the recurring questions and conversation topics, and you'll come away with some solid inspiration. Industry publications. Look at what's being written on large blogs and publications in your industry, and use the headlines as inspiration, but also follow what's happening in the comment sections of those articles, because again, That's where you get a taste of what people are actually thinking and what questions are being asked. Speaking of comments, make sure you're always reading your comments and noting any repeat questions or other trends that you could use for future content. You can also just ask people what they want from you. Nobody knows your readers better than, well, your readers. Finally, looking back at your past content is a fantastic way to brainstorm and plan new content. Always be monitoring what's working and what's not so you can build on your best content and focus your execution on things that actually drive results. So if list posts perform really well for you, do more of those. If a particular tutorial has gotten really popular, consider supplementing it with related tutorials on similar topics. This is really just the tip of the iceberg. There are a ton of ways to find out what your target audience is looking for, but this list is a good start. Like I said earlier, content strategy is all about the question, how and to whom will you provide value? As I'm sure you know, there are many different types of content you can create to serve your audience. In this lecture, I want to go through 20 specific content ideas that you can steal and apply to your own content strategy. If you've been on the internet at all over the last few years, you know that list posts or listicles are massively popular. They're easy to skim and digest in a world of 140 character attention spans, but the best list posts go deep. They're not just bullet point lists. Each list item is a headline with a more detailed explanation under each one, often with images and other rich media embedded. When you approach it like this, you're serving the people who skim and the people who want more substance. It's a win-win. How-to guides and tutorials are a cornerstone of successful blog content and one of the most straightforward ways to provide value, by teaching people how to do something. They can be long or short, but a great way to top your competition is to dive deeper and explain each step in more detail than what they do. Well-executed how-to content can be a significant driver of traffic, particularly from search engines where people are actively searching for solutions. Explainers are another type of informative content, but instead of teaching people how to do something, they explain a particular concept in detail. So for example, you could explain the history of a topic, how something works, or why things are the way they are. Explainers can perform really well as a response to news or current events. So if there's a news story in your space where some of the background or concepts are unclear to the general public, you can add to the conversation with an explainer post. Checklists are sort of a subcategory of list posts, but they're a powerful form of content in their own right. With a checklist, the goal is to create a list of items or products or actions that are necessary for a particular task or goal. So you compile everything that people need into a list, and you've got a nice, actionable, shareable piece of content. Q&A. Questions and answers are always a good starting point for content. There are a couple of ways to handle Q&A. You can write a long post answering a bunch of related questions in one place, or you can write a series of posts answering a single question in detail with each one. In most cases, I would recommend the series approach, if only for the SEO benefit of attracting readers searching for the answer to a specific question. An interview is a great format for just about any topic. Get in touch with an important figure in your area of interest and interview them. Ask open-ended questions and get their insights on things your readers care about. Interviews work well in text, video, or audio formats. Profiles are another way to share the stories of people in your industry. When you profile someone, you'll want to write about who they are, what they do, what experiences they've had, and how they got to where they are today. A good profile usually begins with an interview, but you'll want to scour the web for any additional information that may be relevant. After interviewing and profiling hundreds of entrepreneurs, this is one of my favorite content formats. Expert roundups. This one is kind of a combination of a list post and an interview. Basically, what you can do is email a bunch of experts and ask them to answer one single question for you. Then compile all of their answers into a post. Because it's a single question, even busy people who wouldn't have time for a full interview may have time to answer it for you. And at the end, you'll have a wide range of insights on a single issue, making for a unique, informative resource that's highly shareable. People to follow. This one is basically the who's who of your industry, a list of people you feel are worth following and why. Entrepreneur.com, for example, put out a list of 50 online marketing influencers to watch, linking to their respective websites and Twitter accounts. Reviews. Reviews are pretty self-explanatory. You take a look at a product or service that's relevant to your audience and provide an honest overview of your thoughts and experience with it, breaking down the good and the bad. Comparisons are similar to reviews, but instead of just covering a single product, you put two similar products side by side, usually competing products, and discuss the differences to help your readers make the right buying decision. News content is interesting because it usually won't drive long-term traffic, but it can drive a substantial amount of short-term traffic. When it comes to news, there are two distinct approaches that are really effective. Either be the first or be the best. If you're the first person to cover a story, you'll naturally get a lot of shares and traffic and links as the original source. But if you're not first, you can spend some extra time to offer additional context and analysis that the original source may have neglected. Link roundups. I used to do a weekly roundup for the tech industry where every Friday I compiled the most important news and the best thought and opinion pieces of the week. You can do something like that or compile the best tools and resources on a given topic. Either way, it saves your readers from having to do the research themselves, and it's easy to write because you're curating other people's content rather than creating your own. Thought and opinion pieces are a great way to go deeper with your content and encourage reader engagement. Consider an issue that's important to your industry and your readers, and take a side. While we're on the topic, I should mention that controversy is very good for traffic and engagement. I don't think you should actively seek out controversy, but anytime I've taken a stance on a controversial issue, it has generated a lot of buzz. Again, though, I want to be clear. If you're going to do controversy, it has to be genuine. Don't go over the top or inflate your opinions for traffic. Authenticity is good. Stories. Humans are natural storytellers, so stories map pretty well to digital content. Stories can entertain your readers and deliver your message in a really unique way. So for example, you could tell a story about someone who wanted to do something, but failed because they didn't do X, Y, and Z. You can also work personal stories from your own life into your blog posts. It makes you more relatable and more human to the people on the other side of the screen. Facts and statistics. Some of my most popular posts have been data-oriented articles with facts and figures surrounding a particular topic. Search engines love this stuff, so if you can compile some relevant statistics from various sources, you should be able to drive a good amount of traffic. Be sure to cite all of your sources so people know where you're getting your information. Original research. If you want to take facts and statistics a step further, you can publish original research on your blog. By conducting your own studies and surveys and sharing the results, you can become a credible and respected source for research in your industry. Once you've grown a large audience or customer base, these people will be your ideal research participants. Whenever you publish research, be sure to include contextual details like your sample size and methodology. Infographics. Infographics can complement your statistics and original research by helping readers visualize your data in a really beautiful way. If you have design skills, you can create them yourself. Otherwise, you can hire someone using a freelance platform like Upwork. And finally, we have case studies, which are a huge asset if you're running a service business. A case study tells the story of how you've helped a particular customer solve their problems, often with quotes or testimonials from the customer themselves. Social proof is a powerful factor in buying decisions, and you can use it to your advantage with a few case studies. So there you have it, 20 content formats that you can work into your content strategy. I can't wait to see what you do with them. It's an age-old question in the blogging world. How often should you post? Now, to be perfectly honest, there is no clear-cut answer. It really comes down to your particular style and the style of content you produce. If you tend to write super long posts, it's probably going to be difficult to publish on a daily or maybe even weekly basis. But if most of your content consists of short news articles and things like that, it'll be in your best interest to post more frequently. My preference is actually a mix of both. You can write long articles and then supplement them with shorter, more digestible content. So one strategy is to batch produce a few pieces of shorter content and then schedule them to go out one by one in the future. Then you have a few days or weeks to prepare your longer posts while the shorter ones trickle out. I recommend installing the editorial calendar plugin to help you visualize scheduled content. If you ever feel the need to choose between quality and quantity, quality is the right choice every single time. Usually when you think of blog content, you think of a standard text blog post. Now it might have some images and videos and stuff like that embedded, but when it comes to the core content, what most people think of is text. But I'd like to challenge that assumption a little bit because we as bloggers are by no means limited to the written word. There are so many different content formats you can deploy to get your message across, and it's worth exploring some of the different options to see which formats best suit your personal skill set as well as the preferences of your audience. So video is a great example. We're actually living in the golden age of online video. So many companies are turning to video as their primary medium for storytelling. And for a lot of consumers, it's the ideal way to consume media. So if you're good on camera, or if you find video to be compelling, you could experiment with putting out video content instead of just text. There are a couple of ways to do that. You could just upload videos directly to your site, but what most people tend to prefer is uploading videos to YouTube and then just embedding the videos in WordPress. That way the video is hosted by YouTube, so you don't have to worry about the extra strain on your server. And you also get the added benefit of being discoverable on the actual YouTube platform, which is a great way to start growing an audience. Podcasting is another medium that's been exploding lately. I actually hosted a roundtable podcast for a few years, and that was enormous fun to do. So if you think audio may play well with your audience, give it a try. It's pretty easy to set up a podcast in WordPress. Personally, I always use the PowerPress plugin. You just create a regular blog post, attach your audio file with PowerPress, and you're good to go. Here's a little bonus tip if you're on a budget and want to start podcasting while keeping your expenses to a minimum. Pick up the Audio-Technica ATR 2100. This is a high-quality, affordable microphone that works over both USB and XLR, and then use the free program Audacity for your recording and editing. So again, there's video, there's audio. If you have design skills, you could do infographics or something like that. The point here is that you're not limited to the traditional text blog post. Feel free to take the content ideas we covered earlier in this section and adapt them to a format that works for you. In this lecture, I'm going to share with you a strategy used by some of the world's most prolific content creators to generate what seems like an infinite stream of fresh content. So as we saw, when you're creating content for your blog, you have a number of different formats to choose from. You can do regular written posts, you can do audio, you can do video, you can do other visual formats. You have plenty of options at your disposal, and it can actually be in your interest to do more than one. You see, when you create a piece of content in one format, there's a huge opportunity there to repurpose that content and share it again in a different format. You can use that as a way to promote the original content or to deliver the same message to a completely different audience. Let me give you an example. Let's say you interview a high-profile thought leader in your industry, and let's say it's a video interview. That kind of interview by itself is an amazing opportunity to generate traffic and links and social shares and build authority and credibility around your brand. But if you just post the video and call it a day, you're not really squeezing all the juice out of the orange, so to speak. There's still a lot of untapped potential in that one piece of content. So here's what I would do in that situation. First of all, when I initially post the interview, I'd create a blog post with a video embedded at the top. I'd write up a quick summary, and below that, I would transcribe the entire interview to text, every word. That way, if somebody comes along and wants to read the interview rather than watch it, they can do that. And having that transcript there also helps with search traffic because search engines are much better at understanding text than video. So that's the initial post. I've already done a lot more than most people would, but I'm not finished. An interview with an influencer can be a great source of social media content. So I'd pull out a few of the most impactful quotes and tweet them out over the next few days, making sure to tag the person and link back to the interview. Then I'd use the same quotes to create some beautiful graphics using a tool like Canva or Pablo by Buffer. Then I'd post those on Instagram and Facebook, again making sure to tag the person and point people to the original video. I might even make a short highlight reel of some of the best one-liners of the interview and share that on Instagram as well. Then, if I have a podcast, I'd convert the video to audio and release it as a podcast episode. And I'd probably just record an intro and an outro so my listeners understand the context of what they're hearing. But guess what? We're still not done. We can actually go a little bit further and craft another blog post with a headline like the 3 most valuable lessons I learned from whatever the person's name is. Here we're appealing to a slightly different audience, people who may not have time to watch or read an entire long-form interview, but are still interested in getting a condensed version of the main points. Then you can even repurpose that post a little bit, turn it into a podcast episode where you elaborate on what you learned and why it matters, and maybe tweet out bits and pieces of what you learned, make more graphics, and so on. Think about what I just did. I took one video interview and managed to turn it into a dozen or more individual pieces of content. Most people are not willing to do that, which makes it an incredible opportunity to set yourself apart. And it's actually not that hard to do since you're just repurposing existing content rather than creating something entirely new. See if you can work this little trick into your content strategy. It's simple, but very, very powerful. Once you've got a handle on your content strategy, you need to get your content in front of an audience. This is where a lot of people drop the ball. They start cranking out epic content, but then nobody ever sees it because they don't do anything to promote it. The old build it and they will come adage sounds pretty good in theory, but in practice, it's just not enough. You have to put in the work. Not just in your content creation, but in your promotion as well. In fact, you may see better results by spending more time on promotion than you spend on creating new content. In this section, we're going to talk about search engine optimization, social media, and 12 strategies you can use to promote your content and grow your audience without spending a dime. Let's start with SEO, which is short for search engine optimization. There are a lot of shady SEO tactics out there, and we're not going to cover those here. My philosophy is one of long-term value. I think you'll gain a lot more by playing the long game and focusing on the quality of your content than by employing spammy short-term tactics that may come back to haunt you in the future. Let me give you an example. Years ago, a bunch of sleazy marketers realized they could get a lot of backlinks by going to thousands of random blogs and leaving incoherent comments with links back to their sites. That actually worked for a while, but eventually Google got wise and penalized all of them. So as the editor of a popular blog, I started getting emails from companies begging me, even offering money in some cases, to remove the spammy comments their old SEO agency left on their behalf, because those links were now negatively impacting their search rankings. Don't make that mistake. You can get plenty of backlinks by earning them and doing other kinds of legitimate promotion. If you feel the need to game the system, your content probably isn't good enough. Focus on that first. What I do want to cover here is on-site SEO. That is optimizing your website's code and content to maximize your visibility on Google and other search engines. This doesn't have to be a hard process. In fact, WordPress plays pretty well with search engines right out of the box. But it doesn't hurt to fine-tune some things to improve your results. Before we dive deeper, I should mention that the primary goal of Google and other search engines is to deliver the most relevant, high-quality results for any given search query. That means that you as a creator and webmaster should be focused primarily on 2 things: content quality and user experience. Content quality is about giving people exactly what they're looking for, whether that's an informative list, an in-depth tutorial, or a comprehensive product review. User experience has to do with the mechanics of your website itself. For example, do your pages load quickly? Is your site mobile responsive? Once you've got all that covered, you'll want to optimize the code on your site to be as descriptive and readable for search engines as possible, while targeting the specific keywords you'd like to rank for. To do this, I recommend using the free Yoast SEO plugin, which is available from the WordPress repository. We're not going to spend a ton of time on this, but we'll go through the essentials. There's an excellent WordPress SEO guide on Yoast.com if you'd like to dive deeper. The first thing you'll want to do is customize your permalink structure, which determines what your post URLs look like. You don't even need a plugin for this one. Just head over to the permalinks page under Settings in your WordPress dashboard. The default setting looks like this. It's pretty ugly and not very search engine friendly. I recommend switching to a structure that contains your post name and preferably just your post name. Once you set this up, you'll have an option on the new post screen to set a custom slug for the post. Otherwise, it'll be auto-generated from your post title. In either case, it's more search engine friendly than the random string of numbers you'd get from the default setting. Next, we're going to optimize your page titles for SEO using the Yoast SEO plugin. Page titles are super important for SEO. They serve not only as the actual title of the page, but also as the first line people see in the search results. Ideally, the keywords you want to rank for should come early in your page titles, and that's for two reasons. First, search engines give more ranking weight to the early words, and second, people scanning the search results, just skimming through, will see the early words first. So if your keywords appear early in your page titles, you're more likely to rank highly, and people are more likely to click to your site. What that means is you don't want the name of your blog to come before the title of your post in the page title. Go to the Titles and Metas section in Yoast, then click Post Types, and make sure the post title comes first. That's just your default setting though. You can also customize the page title for an individual post where appropriate. The Yoast plugin automatically adds a new panel to the new post page where you can override your default settings. Good titles are descriptive and enticing, contain your target keyword, preferably at the beginning, and contain your brand name, preferably at the end. Next, we have meta descriptions. These are used by search engines for the black text at the bottom of a listing. By default, a snippet will be pulled from your page content based on what the user searched for. But for best results, you should write it yourself on a post-by-post basis using the field that Yoast gives you. There's really no way to automate this. You really have to do it for each individual post. So make sure it contains the keyword you like to rank for at least once, and use it to entice the reader to click through. One of the great things about the Yoast plugin is that you can enter your focus keyword and it'll analyze your content and tell you how optimized your site is to rank for that particular keyword. I recommend doing that with every new post before you hit publish. It's also a good idea to optimize your images, which is something most people overlook. Anytime you add an image to a post, add a descriptive alt attribute to tell search engines what the image is. This can get you a little more search traffic by helping your photos rank on Google Images, for example, and it'll also help visually impaired readers make sense of your content if they're using a screen reader. Finally, Yoast allows you to quickly and easily set up an XML sitemap, which allows Google and other search engines to know when your site is updated. Go to the XML sitemaps page in the Yoast plugin and make sure it's enabled. There are some options you can edit, but you're probably fine leaving everything as is. Now when you publish a new post or page, the new sitemap is automatically submitted to Google and Bing so they can quickly and easily index your new content. Like I said, if you'd like to dive deeper, I recommend checking out the WordPress SEO tutorial on Yoast.com. It's a long read, but it'll give you a much more comprehensive look at SEO in the world of WordPress. With that said, if you just implement the tips in this lecture, you're already way ahead of most new bloggers. Now let's talk about social media. As a blogger, you should be using social media to not only drive traffic to your site, but to grow your brand and build relationships with your audience as well. Which is a great segue into our first talking point. Social media should be social. Lots of new bloggers and even big brands make the mistake of using social media solely as a distribution channel, and then they wonder why it's not driving the results they want. There's nothing wrong with sharing your blog posts. Don't get me wrong, you should definitely be doing that. But there's so much more to it than shouting links out into the void all day. The single most important thing you can do on any social media platform is engage in meaningful conversations with people in your target market. So for example, on Twitter, I spend a lot of time searching for relevant subject matter and jumping into public conversations where I feel I have something to add. Now that doesn't mean spamming. Okay, I don't want to give you the wrong idea here. You don't jump in and say, hey, check out my blog post. Hey, check this out. Hey, check that out. No, you just jump in and add something of value. Say, oh yeah, I agree with this. I think this. Just add some kind of value to the conversation like you were talking to a friend. The second most important thing is creating native content tailored to each platform. There's a reason we don't just have one social network. Each platform has its own unique nuances that you have to learn and respect. People want to see different stuff on Facebook than they want to see on Twitter or Pinterest or Snapchat. The key is mastering what people want from each platform and giving it to them in the right place at the right time. Now, that does require you to create some micro content specifically for each social media platform, but I promise in the long run, it'll be well worth your time. So which platforms should you be using? You don't have to be everywhere. You just have to be where your audience is. Everyone should be on Facebook because everyone's audience is on Facebook. Most people should be on Twitter and Instagram, but your mileage may vary with other platforms. Snapchat is great for the younger crowd, Pinterest skews largely towards women, and LinkedIn is good for professional audiences, just to give you a couple examples. The main thing is to figure out where your target market hangs out and be there. Social media traffic is a big factor in a blog's growth these days, so it's important to make it as easy as possible for readers to share your content with share buttons. There are a lot of plugins you can use to add share buttons to your site. Ultimate Social is my personal favorite. You can get it from codecanyon.net for like $15, but there are also plenty of free plugins out there that do essentially the same thing. Just get one of them and make sure you have share buttons for the 3 to 5 social media platforms that your readers use most. It's also a good idea to optimize your site so it looks good when people share it by getting set up with Facebook's Open Graph and Twitter cards. These help ensure the right images, headlines, and descriptions show up when people share your posts on Facebook or Twitter. And luckily, you can get both of them working with your site using the Yoast SEO plugin we talked about in the last lecture. Just go to the social page under SEO in your WordPress dashboard and follow the instructions. Jetpack by WordPress.com also offers similar functionality. One of the big questions in the social media marketing world is to automate or not to automate. Here's my perspective on automation. It can be super helpful if used correctly. It's okay to use services like Buffer or Edgar to schedule posts and things like that, but never try to automate engagement. Replies, comments, direct messages, these are all things you'll be much better off doing manually. Trust me on this, you never want to be perceived as a spam bot. In this lecture, we're going to go through 12 specific content promotion strategies you can use to get your blog in front of more people. You can put all of these strategies into action even if you're working with a limited budget. They don't cost anything but time. The first one is strategic guest posting. When you're just getting started, one of the best blog promotion strategies is writing a series of guest posts for other more influential blogs. It's a time-consuming process, to be sure, but it can pay off big time by launching your blog into the spotlight and really putting you on the map. There's an important caveat, though. Any guest posts you write have to meet an extremely high standard of quality. If you write a subpar guest post, it probably won't get published, but even if it does, you don't want that to be the public's first impression of you. So make sure you only offer your best work for guest posts. As far as actually getting published, it's all about the pitch. As an editor, I've gotten tens of thousands of guest post pitches over the last few years, and most of them go straight to the trash. Here's what a perfect pitch looks like to me. Simple, but descriptive. Tell me who you are and why I should care, and then give me 3 specific post ideas to choose from, with a simple outline or description for each one. Start with the smaller blogs and work your way up to the big guys as you get some guest posts under your belt. Next, we have expert roundups. So I know we already covered this in the content section, but it deserves a mention as a promotion strategy too. Not only are expert roundups a great content format, they're also a killer way to get leading influencers to share your content. So to refresh your memory, you reach out to a bunch of experts, ask them a single question, and compile all their answers into one big post. Then, and this is where it becomes a promotion strategy, send them a link to the post when it goes live. Because they contributed to it, chances are they won't mind sharing it with their audience, and that'll send in a pretty good influx of traffic for you. The people to follow list is very similar to the expert roundup, and you can leverage it in much the same way. People love to be recognized for their work and expertise. It's an ego thing. And if you surprise somebody by saying, hey, I featured you in this list of experts, they'll likely check it out to see what you said about them. And hopefully